Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going over the last 2 days of spoilers from Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering. New combos, new synergies, mostly focusing on standard here, but also pioneer some older format combos, some sweet synergies. Let's jump right into it with this awesome new giant turtle, the ancient Adam Adamatoise. Oh no. Don't know how to pronounce this one. Adamatoise, I believe. 8 mana for an 8/20. It's a turtle with vigilance and ward 3. Damage isn't removed from the creature during cleanup steps, and all damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. And if it dies, you exile it and you create 10 tap treasure tokens. This card's got a lot going on for it. Big mana cost, big booty, vigilance, ward, can't die. If it dies, you get a bunch of treasures. So definitely a lot of different ways of using this. I mean, the first thing I thought of was sort of like this turtle deck that I played on this channel in the past, with ways of sort of like flipping, having the toughness do damage. Like we got Bedrock Tortoise and Streetwise Negotiator in standard. Maybe if you like zombify this on turn 4 and then you play one of those on the next turn and you just attack for 20, that could be a way of using this card. Probably not hard casting this thing. It's pretty expensive. So, um, there's got to be some way to sneak this into play. Zombify is the cheapest way I could think of if you're kind of reanimating it. There are some other ways to kind of cheap creatures into play, but I don't know. This could be decent in that kind of strategy, maybe if that's kind of what you're doing. Other uses are like if you're gonna like try to get the tokens, the treasure tokens here, you could like pull it back from push pull from the graveyard, attack, get 10 treasure tokens. That could be something. Or if you have Civ Sig ceremony, then you can maybe hard cast this for because it costs 8, right? You hard cast this for 6, and then you get 10 treasures. So it's like a way of ramping yourself, and then you get a zombie as well. I don't know, something interesting potentially with the Civ Sig ceremony there. But there's other uses too. I think the maybe the coolest use is sort of with Parination, which is 6 mana to return any permanent from the graveyard, but you get a hexproof and indestructible counter on it. So basically, you can't die from damage if you have an indestructible counter on this thing. It can take as much damage as it wants, but it won't die. So then you won't die. So all the damage is dealt to you, and it also protects all your other permanents, which is kind of interesting from damage. So pretty hard to lose if you have that. I mean, there is ways to exile it with mass exile, removal, things like that. But and you could also get milled out, or I guess if they do something that like makes you lose life, that cause you to lose life, that would also make you lose if you had this combination. But maybe just in combination with Herald of Eternal Dawn, you could have this is sort of like an additional herald in that sort of deck, and you can parination that, and yeah, maybe that's just kind of gives you some redundancy of it. But I don't know if this card is really going to see play in standard. It's very expensive, and it doesn't like instantly win you the game like some other 8 drops could potentially, or Atraxa. I'm not sure if it's better than like Atraxa, but it's certainly an interesting card. Even if you do hardcast it, it kind of like gains you 20 life essentially. So that's kind of cool. But no, let me know in the comments below what you think about this. In older formats, we also have this is like Pioneer legal. Some other ways, I was thinking catapult fodder. So if you had catapult fodder, say you zombify this into play, and you have another creature with a greater toughness and power, you could flip it over, and then the next turn just fling it at your opponent for 20. So that could be funny. Solid footing is kind of cute with this. It is actually a creature with vigilance, so you can actually use this last mode on solid footing, and it's flash. So if you attack with this for some reason, again, if you like reanimate it on 4, attack with it on turn 5, solid footing them, and then boom, take 21. Could be pretty fun. I don't know. Some interesting uses for it. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't say play anywhere just because it's so expensive, but it's got a lot of cool and really interesting and unique abilities. I think it's the first time a card has mentioned a cleanup step in its text box, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, definitely powerful. We'll see, and it has 20 toughness, so it's also a card to like kind of keep in mind with future cards. If there's other cards they print that toughness matters, things as like, I don't know, reveal a card from your hand, gain life equal to its toughness, something like that. This card could be good in that sort of situation as well. All right, let's move on to this sweet new equipment. Going to pronounce all these cards wrong. A tier and pre-win. 6 mana for a legendary equipment. Equip creature is base power and toughness XX, where X is your life total, and equip is 5. So very expensive to play and equip. Powerful ability if you can keep your life total up above, a decent amount. Even if it just makes it a 10-10, that could be pretty good. There are ways to cheat this into play on creatures in standard. I've seen other people talk about this card and completely dismissing it. I don't think you want to completely dismiss this card because things like Danitha is pretty sweet. If you play Danitha, put this on Danitha. Let's just say your life total was 10 by the time you get to play Danitha. Then Danitha is a 10-10, but it has this ability where its power toughness is equal to your life total. So then if you attack with Danitha, you gain 10 life, you go up to 20, then Danitha becomes a 20-20. The next turn you could attack, gain 20, and then Danitha becomes a 40-40. You kind of just keep scaling up your life gain with that, or you give a double strike, something like that. Trample. So there are ways to cheat it into play directly onto a creature, and especially Danitha with lifelink is quite good. I mean, it dies to go for throat, like everything does go for throat, right? So if you play this and you put it into play, they go for a throat it. Not great. You do get into play that way, and maybe you can equip it to something else. Magmatic Snuffler as well, or One Last Job can also sneak it into play onto a creature. So maybe there's some jank combos. I'll probably try to make this work in standard. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see that as a deck in the future. But I do think it's not just like completely unplayable in standard because there are some ways. And again, I'll show you at the end of the video too, there's some uncommons that cheat the equip costs that we've gotten already too. Not sure if that's quite good enough, because 6 mana is still very expensive just to play. But we'll see. Seems fun, a fun jank potential. Anyways. All right, we've got Van here, Freedom Seeker, 3 mana for a 2/2, red legendary human scout, and it says whenever one or more scouts, pirates, and or rogues you control deal combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. You may cast it, and if you don't, create a treasure token. So I think the way this is worded, it's you only get one treasure token. Let me know in the comments below if that's correct. It says one or more scouts. So it wouldn't matter if you hit them with two. I would think you only still get one treasure. Not 100% sure, but there are some decent. I was looking through the pirates and the rogues and the scouts. There's actually a pretty good selection of rogue scouts and pirates that you could play in standard right now that are playable. Pretty good constructed cards. The Spyglass Siren, Malcolm, Fairy Mastermind, the Escort, and these all I pick these because they have evasion, some flying, so you can most likely get the effect. You could play this on turn 1 or 2, play one of these flyers, then play Van, and then get in, create a treasure token right away. And then in future turns, if you cast any of the spells you don't own, you put a +1/+1 counter on each scout, pirate, and rogue you control. So that's kind of interesting. Buffing your entire team is pretty powerful for basically free, essentially. If you're already casting the spell, you're kind of getting value out of that. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Problem with this card is it's just like a 2/2 and it dies to like shock and every other removal spell. So 3 mana, paying 3 mana for a 2/2 that just dies, really not that great, but it does have a pretty good upside. I could, if it can scale pretty quickly and kind of take over the game if you are able to do this. There's some other interesting synergies here, I thought, with Gonti and Laughing Jasper Flint. Both of these are rogues, and both of these care about casting and let you cast spells from your opponent's library. So they kind of work in this whole theme. So maybe you're kind of going this red-black rogue deck. Uh, Laughing Jasper Flint specifically cares about outlaws, so maybe you're kind of playing in that sort of shell. I don't know. It's interesting. Could be good. Maybe this is more of a commander thing. Probably is, as a lot of the set is. But this card's interesting. Something to consider. There's some pretty good playable creatures with it, but maybe just not powerful enough for what standard is up to these days. Okay, let's talk about a few vehicles that we got new vehicles. The Regalia, 4 mana for a 4/4 vehicle with haste, colorless, so you can play it in any deck here. And whenever it attacks, reveal cards from the top card of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped. Rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So the Regalia here, it's got Crew 1, which is interesting and pretty good that you can pretty crew it with basically anything. It could go pretty well in a like landfall aggro deck, which we're kind of seeing. We got the Chocobos, we got Bristly Bill, we got Mossborn Hydra. Vine Lasher is kind of nice to crew this. All of these kind of have potentially low power that can crew this, and then it can attack right away and get you an additional land to trigger all your landfalls while you're attacking. So maybe this is the top end of some sort of landfall aggro deck. Not sure. Could be decent. And something to at least try out. It is legendary, so you probably don't want to play too many copies of this. Um, but not a bad rate. And if you get like 2 or 3 lands off of this, that's pretty good value as well. So I don't know, interesting, something to consider, maybe test out. Doesn't seem like super broken or anything to me, but does seem like it's got potential in the right shell. Okay, let's go to the next vehicle here, which is the Lunar Whale, which is 4 mana for a 3/5 legendary vehicle with flying. You can look at the top card of your library at any time, and as long as it attacked this turn, you can play the top card of your library, and has Crew 1. So this card really reminds me of the Belligerent, which never really saw any play at all. So I'm not too hyped that this will see some play. But it is interesting. I mean, the Belligerent gives you a treasure token when it attacks, versus this doesn't. And then basically kind of do the same thing. You can look at the top card and then play lands. The Belligerent does top card of your library. Okay, I think you can still play lands with this thing, I believe. I was going to say Belligerent lets you play lands, but I think you can still do that with the Lunar Whale. Let me know if that's wrong. But I think the big difference here, well, one is flying versus the power, and then the crew cost, I think, is probably the biggest difference, which may make this more playable. Um, because in standard there are quite a few one power creatures that are good. If you kind of are ramping into this maybe with Land Elves, then you can use the Land Elves to crew it and attack and the next turn and play things off the top of your library. That is a powerful effect for sure. That's potentially like drawing a few cards every turn. And having flying does matter for vehicles, and to be able to attack multiple times over and over again, getting the card advantage, Spyglass Siren, Novice Inspector, maybe Deep Cavern Bat. All of those could crew this potentially, as well as be sort of utility creatures. So maybe it's worth it, at least trying out. And I think that is a big advantage over the Belligerent, that it can just crew for one. But I don't know, again, kind of what Standard's up to these days. It's hard to say if this is really going to fit in, but a cool card nonetheless, and a cool whale vehicle. All right, let's go to Tela, the Great Sage here. 5 mana for a 3/3 legendary human wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, and if 4 or more mana was spent to cast a spell, draw 2 cards. If 8 or more mana was spent to cast a spell, sacrifice it, and it deals that much damage to each opponent. So this card is clunky, and again, I think this is more of a commander card, but I'm trying to think of constructed formats with this, if this could be good. Just making a 1/1 is not that good. There are cards. There's a 2 mana card that does this as a 2/1 that makes a 1/1 every time you cast a non-creature spell. So you probably aren't playing it for that mode. But the ability to draw 2 cards every time you cast something with 4 or more mana is intriguing. You could maybe like pop off with like big score with this if you kind of like reduce the cost of the big score. Um, or anything that gives you, mana when it comes into play, but it costs 4. I couldn't think of any like rituals that cost 4 that would work with this, but maybe you could kind of pop off with a bunch of rituals if they cost 4 or more. Um, and then the last ability, 8 or more, you can sacrifice it and then kind of deal that much damage. I mean, you do have to pay the mana here. You can't like cheat on the cost of the stuff, but it does kind of like double up your fireball effects, which is kind of cool. Like the Soul's Rage, maybe that would double up its damage essentially. it would actually do more because it's all the mana that you cast for it. So if you played this for 10, that would be 12 mana total, and so you do 22 damage with that. So I don't know, interesting card. Probably just too slow for standard, but definitely interesting. I mean, I do think the sort of like big score, kind of like popping off, could be pretty sweet in Commander. So something to consider there. All right, let's move on to some uncommons here. The Garnet Princess of Alexandria, 2 mana for a 2/2, green and white, legendary human noble cleric with lifelink. Lifelink, I think, is pretty key on this card and makes it pretty good. And when it attacks, you can remove a lore counter from each of any number of sagas you control and put a +1/+1 counter on it for each lore counter removed this way. Now, I don't think we have sagas that like cost 1 or 2 mana that I'm aware of in standard, anyways. But there are quite a few good 3 mana sagas that you could curve into this. And what this does is it removes a lore counter from a saga. So whenever you remove a lore counter, it doesn't trigger again, but it would the next turn trigger the ability. And essentially, it lets you kind of keep that saga around, keep going over and over again. And you can do this to each. It says a lore counter from each of any number of sagas. So if you had 2 or 3 sagas out, you could remove that, and you put that many +1/+1 counters on it, so you can buff this pretty quickly. But it does curve into some nice 3-drop sagas too. Like the Princess Takes Flight is kind of cute here. If you play this on 2, Princess Takes Flight, you remove their blocker, you exile it on chapter 1, attack, remove the counter, hit them for 3, and then the next turn you exile another one of their creatures, attack, remove the counter, hit them for 4, gain 4 life. If they play another creature, you just keep exiling, and basically, you kind of lock them out of the game with that, um, until if they kill their guy, whatever, it goes to the last chapter and puts them all back into play. But it seems pretty good. Also, like Awaken the Honored Dead, kind of the same thing, though they wouldn't come back. So you could keep triggering that first ability to destroy one of their permanents. Huntsman's Redemption, maybe you could keep making 3/3 beasts over and over again. Could be kind of cute. It is kind of cool too with the saga creatures that we're getting here, like the summon here, the uh, Fenrir, Fenrir, I believe. 3 mana for the 3/2. The first mode is to search your library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped. So you could kind of just ramp yourself every turn, keep pumping this up, and get your 3/2, keep him in play to keep attacking with as well. So that could be useful. Interesting card. We'll see what other kind of summons we get and sagas that we have available when the full set is revealed. But this card seems pretty powerful to me, to be honest. Um, it seems like it could, in the right curve and the right deck. Obviously, you have to build a bunch of sagas around it, but could be pretty good. And then, on turn 4, if you kind of slam another saga, you can keep using those effects over and over again. It pumps this thing twice. Um, yeah, pretty good. I can see this kind of running away with games potentially, if you kind of built around it in that way. But kind of an interesting card. Let me know what you think about this one as well. Okay, next up we got a land here, which I think is decent. The Gold Saucer, so a town which taps for a colorless, and then 2 mana to flip a coin. If you win the flip, create a treasure token, and then 3 mana tap and sacrifice 2 artifacts to draw a card. Interesting card. Kind of reminded me of Fountain Port when I first saw it. Can make treasures. You can sacrifice stuff to draw cards. It has different abilities and different costs for their abilities here. But Fountain Port is such a good card because it's such a low opportunity cost to put it in your deck. It is a colorless land, so you have to have some colorless costs in your cards to be able to have it to have the mana be useful. But um, Fountain Point does see play in at least in Pioneer, and other formats in Standard, of course, because it has a bunch of good abilities on a land, and having those abilities is useful, and you don't really lose anything necessarily by having it. So this card, I think, is kind of the same in that regard, is that if you have extra mana floating around, you could just start flipping coins and hoping to create treasure tokens, which could kind of ramp you. If you're able to win the flip on turn 3 with this, you kind of ramp from 3 to 5, which is pretty powerful potentially. With just in a land, like most of the mana ramp in standard already costs 3, and this kind of gives you that potentially just by playing lands as well. So that is a powerful effect. You do have to get lucky, of course. So I don't know. You have to kind of like weigh out the risks of using your turn to do that or not. And then the last ability, like I don't know if you'll use that much, but again, you can use the treasures that it makes to sacrifice to draw cards. Maybe in an artifact heavy deck or a colorless like Ugin deck, this could be pretty good to help you ramp into Ugin, um, and then have artifacts that you can sacrifice. But the uses I was thinking of this when I first saw it was some like Quintorius. I think would be pretty sweet for Pioneer. There's sort of a Quintorius combo, or a Breaching Dragonstorm combo, or if you're like ramping into Overlords, anything where you're kind of like ramping into 5 or 6 or 7. This card seems pretty useful if you can afford to have a colorless land, because again, if you just have the mana available, the opportunity cost is so low, and the chance that you'll get an extra treasure, which could essentially, let you cast your big threat a turn sooner, is pretty high upside. So definitely an interesting card, something to consider when you're building your deck. And also a town, and we'll see again how many payoffs and how much that really matters. I haven't gotten too many payoffs. There are some cards that now that mention it. They seem mostly limited focused, but we'll see. It is a town. Okay, and last up, we've got some uncommons here that work with Colossus Hammer pretty well, and also the other kind of big equipments we've been talking about. Potentially, Stolen Uniform essentially says, very confusingly worded, but you choose an equipment, you gain control of it, and you attach it to one of your creatures, and then if it wasn't yours, you lose control of it. So you can steal your opponent's not creatures, steal their equipment, but you'll lose them at end of turn, so only for one turn. Which given the name Stolen Uniform makes sense. And then Weapons Vendor here is a 4 mana 2/2. When it enters, you draw a card. Then it says the beginning of combat on your turn is you control an equipment. You can pay 1. If you do, you attach target equipment. You control a target creature you control. So again, you can cheat on equipment costs. Now, both of these cards could be decent in like Hammer Time decks, specifically in Pioneer. I think in Modern, there's just better options to equip Colossus Hammer, but Colossus Hammer is a very powerful effect if you can equip it cheaply. You could go Colossus or a creature on turn 1, and then Hammer plus Stolen Uniform to equip it on your creature on turn 2 and attack for 10, 11 damage on turn 2, which is very powerful. Weapons Vendor is a little slower, but it actually does give you some card advantage back, so maybe that's worth considering. And it itself is a creature that you could equip the hammer to. Is also a human, so maybe that has some synergies as well. But interesting, so just something to consider maybe as the top end of your hammer deck. If your opponent has sort of killed all your creatures, then you kind of drop this, draw another card. It kind of gives you some more resiliency, while also giving you the effect of being able to cheaply equip the hammer every turn as well, not just a one-time equip like the Stolen Uniform. So definitely something to consider. Again, the equipments I talked about in this video and the older video, maybe you would use that with in standard, but I think in Hammer Time in particular, these two cards have a chance to see in play. All right. Well, that is all we got for the last 2 weeks of notable cards on my side, combo cards that I could think of. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking about for Final Fantasy. Are you enjoying the flavor, enjoying the commander cards? Are you enjoying the standard cards? I'm not a huge commander player myself. I love standard and played some Pioneer historic as well. Whatever has some sweet combo potential. That's mostly what I play on this channel. So kind of try to review cards through that lens. But let me know in the comments below what you're thinking about, any cool combos, decks that you're excited to build when Final Fantasy drops. I got a whole list of combo deck ideas going here. So love to, if you have any ideas, want to see on the channel, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.